Queria perguntar se você não é. Ah, isso. É.
Right, only. The soul of a man compared to the flame of a wick. Connections. Soul wants to aspire where to be God. Holiness always desires to be nullified.
Okay, we're live on YouTube also, so if you want to post a link, you can do that.
Yeah.
And now we're going to learn chapter 19. We're in Tanya, chapter 19, as mentioned.
We're in the middle of the book.
No, we're starting Yutet.
Okay.
Chapter 18, Perek Yud, talking about how ki karov elecha hadavar me'od b'ficha u'vilvavcha la'asato is possible. God, Moshe says in the Torah, for this is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart to do it. In your heart suggests that it's not only in your action and your speech, but also in your feelings, that you feel what you're doing. Meaning that the mitzvahs of the Torah and following Hashem is something that you do with an emotional involvement. The question is, how is that very near to us? Not so near. The way to do it properly is you contemplate the greatness of Hashem, you think about it, you meditate on it, and when through your contemplation you've developed a relationship, now you can say you're doing the mitzvahs out of a love for Hashem. But what about if you can't? What if you don't have that ability to contemplate so deeply, you just don't know that much about Hashem? What if you're... So in chapter 18, he said that because we are the descendants of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were what is referred to as Merkava LaHashem. They were a chariot to godliness, which means they were so completely transparent and batel, nullified before God and responding only to Him, that they had no self-interest at all. Because they were so completely devoted to Hashem, therefore they merited to bequeath, to give in inheritance, to give in Yerusha to their children, what is called a nefesh kedosha, a holy soul. Meaning, now the Rebbe explained in chapter 18, a soul that comes from the chokhmah of Atzilut in the nefesh. Meaning that in the intellect of the nefesh, there is chokhmah and there's bina. Chokhmah is the intellect's ability to receive new information, to conceive a new thought. To Bina means taking what you already know and developing it, thinking it through, giving it dimensions, giving it width and breadth, and which means Chachma requires a selflessness. Essentially, the way you can best explain it is that the difference between Chachma and Bina, they're both Chachma and Bina, which is like wisdom and understanding. That's the way it's often translated, although translations are... The best way to understand the difference is that Chachma, which is the initial thought, the initial idea, flash of inspiration, and Bina, which is the processing of a thought, the understanding, they're both relationships with a concept. My mind is relating to a concept. The question is, who's in charge in this relationship? Is my intellect in charge, or is the concept in charge? Who's really the main focus of this interaction between my intellect and an idea? In Bina, it's my intellect. I'm processing a thought. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand deeper. I'm trying to develop it into a sensible. So my mind is struggling, is grappling with a concept to develop it. But it's about my mind. Whereas Chokhmah, my mind just sits quiet and open and receives inspiration from this concept. It receives the information, which is why it's possible to be trying to understand something and suddenly you feel like you got it, I understand it, but you can't explain it. Because your chokhmah was open to receive a new idea, and suddenly the idea starts to inform your chokhmah. It's shining. The light of this new idea is illuminating your chokhmah, but you don't understand it. It's still beyond you. It's still bigger than you. You haven't processed it through bina yet. So that's chokhmah and bina. Chokhmah is my mind, my intellect is batel, is humble to the idea, and bina is my intellect is developing the idea. So the bottom line is, back to what we were talking about, is that chokhmah, by definition, is a kind of bitul. It's a kind of humility, where your intellect quiets itself. And so in the nefesh, the only place where pure godliness can shine is not in bina, because bina is very self-aware. Godliness can't shine where the human is self-aware. It's only in chokhmah, where the person isn't promoting self, where the human intellect, or even the neshamas, the nefesh, the sechel of the nefesh, is not feeling its own self. It's available to something other than itself. So chokhmah is the place where you can connect to Hashem. So if we're going to receive this gift from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov of a connection to Hashem, which is through a nefesh kedusha, that's gonna come from the chokhmah sheba nefesh. That's going to be seated in the chokhmah sheba nefesh, because that's where you're completely available to hearing something that's not about you. And because of that, we have, every one of us has what's called the ava misuteret, a hidden love. It's a love it's deep within me. It's not experienced on a regular basis, but it's always there. It's inherited. It's part of my DNA. It's a fact of my being. I have a deep, hidden love for Hashem. Why is it called a hidden love? Because it's like a thought. What's the difference between something you think and something you say? One is revealed and one is concealed, right? So what if I can read your mind? So is your thought now revealed? No, your thought is concealed. Only I can see with that which is concealed, right? So ava misuteret, even when I do bring it up and I do act on it, it's still ava misuteret. It's by definition, it's a hidden love. Why is it hidden? Because it's only experienced in the chokhmah of the nefesh, and it's inherited and not produced by me, and therefore I don't identify with it on a regular basis. This is the ava misuteret, and because of that ava misuteret, any one of us, even those of us who don't know a lot about Hashem and don't have tremendous ability to meditate and contemplate on the greatness of Hashem, any one of us can just tap into that natural hidden love and serve Hashem with love in that way. What is that love good for? That love is good enough to get me to do the mitzvah. It's not good enough to make me get passionate about Hashem, but it's enough to get me to do the mitzvah. And that's why it says, V'levavcha la'asoto. It's a love that's in your heart that's enough to get the job done. In your heart to do it. And then in the end of the chapter, the Alter Rebbe said, and this explains a great mysterious phenomenon in the Jewish people, is that while you can find in many examples throughout the world and throughout history of people who are willing to give up their lives for that which they are passionate about. But the only example we know of people who are willing to give up their lives for something that they're not at all passionate about is a Jewish person who is, for whatever reason, very distant from Torah, and yet when they're pushed against the wall and said and forced to either deny God, bow to the cross, whatever, or be killed, they're willing to die for something that they don't really understand, don't believe in necessarily. They're certainly not passionate about it. And suddenly when push comes to shove, they're willing to give their lives for it. Why? Because of the Chochmah Nefesh, because of the Ava Mesuteret, the hidden love in that part of the Nefesh that is completely open to Hashem. That's what we learned last week. This week, the Alter Rebbe says, oh, by the way, there were 4 questions. Remember the 4 questions at the beginning of chapter 18? We should review them very quickly. The Alter Rebbe asked, this hidden love, we need to understand 4 things about it. What is Shoresh Ahava? What's the source of this Ahava? The Inyana, and what's its purpose? What does it want? What's it trying to do? How is it that we inherit it? And how is fear of Hashem also included in it? Because serving Hashem with love alone is not enough. You have to serve Hashem with love and fear. So those 4 questions. So what's the source of that love? Now we know. The source of the love is the Chochmah Shebenefesh. What is the inyana? What's the purpose? What's the desire? What's the intended effect of this love? Get the mitzvah done. Do what Hashem wants. How is it that we inherit it? Because Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were on the level of Merkava, and therefore they merited to give this level of kedusha of holiness to their children, which, by the way, explains why it was their children who stood at Mount Sinai and received the Torah. And after that, who can ever deny our history subconsciously or whatever? Somewhere deep in our souls, we have the memory of standing at Mount Sinai, being the descendants of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and therefore that's why you can talk to a Jew who says, nah, I don't really care, it doesn't matter, whatever, I'm not interested, it's not for me, it's my grandfather's religion, it doesn't matter. And then you say, oh, so you're not Jewish anymore. And you're probably going to get punched in the nose. Me, not Jewish? Who are you to tell me I'm not Jewish? What are you getting so emotional about? You just said you don't care. That's the nature. That's just how we are. Okay, so now we still have a little bit of the question number 3, and definitely question number 4. We don't have an answer yet. How is fear of Hashem also included in that? So this is where chapter 19 picks up. Let's see how far we get. Perek Yud Tes. You have a page number?
78 by the bottom.
Well, the Tosfos Beer Bayer. The Tosfos Beer, and to explain further. Tzarech Levayer, we need to explain Heitev, explain very well Mashakosov Ner Havai Nishmas Adam, why it says the light, the candle of God is the soul of man. Pirush, this means She Yisrael Hakruyim Adam. The Gemara says that there are 4 different names for man in Torah. Adam, Enosh, Ish, and Gever, I believe. Adam, that specific one, they each have, obviously, they all have specific meanings. They're not all the same. Adam specifically refers to, on a mystical level, the Jewish soul. So, Atem Kruyim Adam, Ve'ein Umes Ha'olam Kruyim Adam. When the Torah uses the word Adam, on the mystical level, that's referring to the Jewish people. So, since we're going to give this a mystical interpretation, this verse, when it says Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, it means that the candle of God is the Jewish soul. Pirush, this means She Yisrael Krim Adam, Jewish people are called Adam. Nishmasam Hi Lamashal Koraner. And their nefesh, their neshama is like a candle, like the light of a candle, not like a candle. The Alter Rebbe specifies the light of the candle. That constantly flickers by its nature, it constantly flickers upward. Because the light of the fire wants by its nature to separate from the wick. The Kabbalah says because it wants to reconnect to its source, which is the source of fire that is to be found just below the orbit of the moon. Don't ask me to explain that. You have to ask the Arizal to explain that. Now, what's interesting is that what happens if the flame does separate from the wick?
From the what?
The wick.
They die.
It goes out.
Mm-hmm.
So what else in nature do you know of that wants to do something that will extinguish itself, that will get rid of itself?
Bees.
They sting and then they die. They don't want to die. They sting even though they're going to die, right? It mentions that also in
It
Tanya.
says that the soul of the man
Also,
the
bees
Adama
like that.
is like the fire on the candle
Yeah.
that flips around,
Yeah.
always going up in his nature because the light of the fire
Wants
want
to
to
go back.
go away up,
Right.
want to go
It
back up
follows the wind.
and connect to the roots above,
To its roots, yeah.
and connect to its root above.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, it's easy for me to understand.
Yeah, so that's right. So v'afshal yedei zeh yichaber, although through doing this it will be extinguished, the candle will go out. V'lo yoyer klum lamata, and it will give no light. It'll be, the light will end. Nevertheless, that's what it wants. V'gam lamayla b'sharshay, even once it gets up, back to its source. If the fire disappears back into its source, of the source of all fire, yisbatel oire b'mitzius b'sharshay, this little tiny flame is going to become completely irrelevant or completely batel, nullified in its source, the source of fire. Nevertheless, that's what it wants by its nature. That's what fire wants. In Kabbalah explanation, the reason fire goes up is because fire wants to go back to where it came from. It's the only thing in nature that goes up, right? Everything else goes down. Kach nishmas ha'adam, the same is true with the soul of Adam. V'chein b'chinas ruach v'nefesh, and also the other levels of the nefesh. Chafetza v'chasheka b'tiv'a, its desire, its want by nature, li'pored v'lotzis min haguf, to separate and go away from the body, v'ledavek b'sharsha u'mekoira b'Hashem achaye chayim baruch hu, to go back to being one with Hashem, the source of light. Hagam, although Shetia Ein Ve'efes, that the soul will go back to being nothing, because one neshama in the presence of Hashem is nothing. But this batel sham b'metzios legamri will become completely batel there. V'lo yishar mimenu mu'uma mimuhusav atzmus harishin, and nothing will be left of its earlier existence in a body, right? It's like it's extinguishing itself, like a flame. That's what it wants by its nature. The teva, this is a very important definition the Alter Rebbe gives here. Teva, nature, zehu shem hamushal. This is a kind of a borrowed term. It's an expression that means lekol davar she'ein bebechinas tam v'das. Anything that is beyond your intellect, anything that you do or want without thinking, that's called nature. The opposite of nature is that which you think and decide to do through an intellectual process. But anything that you do instinctively, naturally, that's called nature. V'gam kana kavana. The same is true here. Sherotzen v'chefetz zeh b'nefesh eino b'bechinas tam v'das v'sechel musig u'muvan ela l'mayla mehatam mehadas v'sechel musig u'muvan. That's the meaning of the desire that the nefesh has. The desire that the neshama has to leave the body is not an intelligent desire. It doesn't do anything for me. My desire to have my soul leave me is not good for me. It's a natural instinct. It's a natural desire that the nefesh has to reconnect to Hashem. Vehi, and it is Bechinas Chachma Shebenefesh. That's the Chachma of the Nefesh that I mentioned before. Sheba Oir Ein Sof Baruch Hu, that has in it this infinite light of Hashem. Meaning that if it doesn't think about itself, it's open to Hashem and Hashem alone. That's the Chachma Shebenefesh. That's why the Nefesh wants to go back to being one with Hashem. V'zeu klal b'kol sitra de kedusha. This is our general rule in everything. Anywhere you find holiness, you will find this nature. She'enei ela ma she'nimshach michachma she'nikra kodesh ha'elyon. This is the fact of anything that comes from holiness that is nothing more than this result of coming from chachma of the nefesh. It's holy, kodesh ha'elyon, meaning it's a holiness from beyond the human experience, even beyond the nefesh, and therefore it just wants Hashem and nothing else. Kodesh ha'elyon is habatal b'metzius ba'orin seif baruch hu hamalubash boi ve'enei davar b'fnei atzmoi v'lachen nikra koyach ma. It's called, as we mentioned last week, koyach ma, which means koach ma is chachma. Those are the same letters. Koach ma means the ability to ask what, meaning just give me more information. Tell me something new. Tell me something I don't know. I want something new. When you're talking to somebody in general, when you're having a conversation, you can tell whether the other person in the conversation is engaging in the conversation emotionally or intelligently. If they're engaging in the conversation emotionally, they're going to argue with everything that you say that they don't already agree with. If it's somebody who's being intelligent about it, they're going to say, "Oh wow, I've never thought of that. I always thought of it the other way. Tell me more." You say, 2 + 2 is 12. Most people will say, "Stop it," because you're emotionally attached to your comfort with the answer that you already have. If I tell you 2 + 2 is 12, and you say, "Really? How does that work? That's fascinating. How'd you get to that?" Now you're having an intelligent conversation, right?
So that's the difference between emotional and intelligent.
Yeah, not to an extent, completely. If I can't explain it, then you reject it after the intellect says, this is nonsense. But if it's purely intellectual, the intellect doesn't instinctively reject new information.
The intellect has more patience.
No, the intellect has more curiosity. It wants something new. You're telling me that 2 + 2, which I know equals 4, can also equal 12? Tell me more. I'd love to hear how that works. Well, I can't explain it. Oh, well, then you're probably telling me nonsense. But I'm not going to reject it just because it's not something I already know. Koach ma means tell me. I want to hear more. Because it's available. It's not self-aware. So the same thing with this Kodesh ha'elyon is the part of the soul that is just purely open to Hashem, has no self-interest. Where do we get that from? Where do we get the ability to be completely transparent to Hashem, at least in that one aspect of our being? From Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, because that's how they were. Because Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were merkava, they were so completely, absolutely selfless to Hashem through their effort. That's why they were zocha. That's why they merited to give as inheritance to all of their descendants after them this little hint of the ability to be completely transparent to Hashem in the Chochmah Shebenefesh. So anything in holiness, anything in Kedusha is going to have that nature. It's completely available to God. Meaning it's separate from anything other than Hashem, separate from that's why it's called Kedusha. Kadosh means separate, right? That's what the word Kadosh really means. It's used to mean holy, but it also means separate. It's muvdal. Vehu hepach mamash mebechinas haklipa v'sitra achra shemimena nafshe sumas ha'olam da'avdin lagamaya v'merhav v'haliteni. It's the exact opposite of the klipa. Klipa is where everything else comes from, like the souls of the natural human soul, the souls of someone who's not Jewish, everything else in nature says, give me a good reason, explain it to me, tell me why, give me a motive, give me an incentive, tell me I'll go to heaven, That's the opposite of kedusha. Liyos yesh v'davar nifra b'fnei atzmai kanal. It wants to be something separate. Hepech b'bechinas hachachma. The opposite of the chachma of a nefesh, huh?
Because heaven and hell are not in the Torah.
They're in the Torah Shabbal Peh.
Yeah.
And they're also hinted in Torah Shebektav. It's not written specifically. You're going to go to heaven if you do the mitzvot, but it's not completely a novel idea in Torah Shabbal Peh. Yeah, that's in Torah Shabbal Peh. Yeah, you don't see the words Olam Haba in Torah Shebektav, but it's there. It's all based
Why
on.
doesn't tell you if it's good or bad? It's heaven or that's
Not good or bad. It's just people say when you die, you go to a better place, right?
what's better.
Shtuyot. It's not better. How do you define better? It's a more comfortable place. It's not a better place. It's a
We
more,
imagine with trees and
You imagine.
and rivers and all that thing.
right. So it's a more beautiful place. It's a more pleasant place. It's an easier place. It's a more wonderful, but it's not better. Better means I have a purpose. And you can only have that here. You can't have that once you die in. So
But then you're
So
part
it
of a
looked
big
like that
purpose.
like
That's
200
why you
years
came.
ago.
not once you go back.
Once you go back, you're like meaningless. That's
Not
everything
meaningless. You're useless.
useless.
You can't do mitzvot once you go to
can
heaven.
go west. So
You-
everything
you
we wish
enjoy
for
Hashem.
these days, we're gonna have them.
No. What we wish for these days is Mashiach. There are two there are two meanings of Olam Haba. One is Gan Eden, where the neshama goes after a person dies, and the other is Yemot HaMashiach, when the world becomes perfect.
But
That's
then
what-
Olam Keminagonoig, we'll still have to wake up,
Right.
go to work, do all that.
That's in the first stage, and then there's the next stage, and even that would be
The
wonderful.
next stage you have all the
Anyway, we're off topic, but yeah.
Okay.
That's what we're hoping for.
It's like a game.
V'lochein nekroyim mesim, and that's why they're called dead. Ki hachachma techaya. The reason why people who don't have a chochma shebenefesh are referred to as dead, the rishaim, wicked people, are called dead. Why are wicked people called dead? Because they're not engaging their chochma shebenefesh at all. It's all about me. If it's all about me, and Hashem is not in the picture, then. So he brings a few different examples of verses in the Torah that refer to chochma as giving life.
It was
Ki
last
chochma
week-
techaya.
it was last week in the parasha or something. Lo hametim ya'alu. Yeah, that it's also meaning
It's in
about
davening,
With the
Right.
Knesset,
Lo
the
ha-mesim,
Knesset.
right.
like.
Loya Mason in Halakha doesn't simply mean that once you die you don't praise Hashem anymore.
Yeah, it's talking
It
about
means
the
people
living.
who are O kisiv yomusa v'loy b'chachma, you die without chachma. V'chein harashayim Pesha Yisrael koydem shaboli then Yisrael kadosh Hashem. The same thing is true with the wicked among the Jewish people, the sinners. Not like what we talked about last week when they're threatened with giving up, being killed to sanctify Hashem's name. Before you do that, before anybody is threatening you with anything, they have that same problem. They're considered as if they're dead because they're not doing anything for Hashem. Ki bechinas hachochma shebenefesh hoalekis im nitzutz elekus ma'orin sev baruch ha'malubash ba heim bechinas golus begufam. This is an interesting little detail. You have somebody who has chochma shebenefesh. So how is it possible that they can behave differently from what their chochma shebenefesh knows and feels? The answer is because the chochma shebenefesh is in their nefesh, but their nefesh is enclosed in the nefesh habehamit. So it's in galut. What's galut? Galut means you're under the control of some foreign government. Right? That's what galut is. Exile means I'm under the control of a foreign authority. So he says, Gam bechinas golus, hein bechinas golus begufam. The chochma shebenefesh, the spark of godliness that's in their nefesh, is in golus. It's in exile in their body. Benefesh habahamis, in the animal soul, mitzad aklipash avchalas molish belev, hamoilechas u'mesheles begufam. Remember, we said you have the city that's the body, the person is like a city, and there are the two kings that are fighting over it. The godly soul's chochma shebenefesh is in exile because the animal soul won the fight, and it's in control of the city. Therefore, it doesn't feel. Beside Golas Ashchina canal, and that's the meaning of Golas Ashchina, when the Shchina gets sucked into Golas with you and with the mistakes that you're making, and when we're doing things that are not pleasing to Hashem, we take the Shechina, which is the part of Hashem that's within me, and we drag it into the Golas with us. V'lochen nikras avazu b'nefesh alekis sheretzoyno v'chafetza ledavka ba v'chefta ledavka ba'avaya chaya chayim baruch hu b'shem ava mesuteret. That's why this love that we're describing is called the ava mesuteret. It's a hidden love because it's in the chachma shebenefesh of the nefesh elokit. It's in the chachma of the godly soul. The godly soul is enclosed in the body and the animal soul, and the animal soul is in control. So the chachma of the nefesh elokit is muted. It's an exile. If it's muted, it's misuteret, it's hidden. So this explains why this ava, this love for God, is completely hidden. Because it's in the chachma of the nefesh elokit, which is in exile in the nefesh abahamit. Ki misuteret umechusa belevush sak de klipa b'Parsha Yisrael. Because in a sinful person, it's hidden and covered in the sackcloth of the sinfulness. And it's from that klipa and the garment of the sackcloth that covers the godly soul, that's where the nonsense, the shtut, the foolishness comes into the mind of the person who sins. Like the sages say, that a person only sins if they have temporary insanity. Gemara says, nobody ever sins if not for a temporary insanity. Nichnas bo ruach shtut. What does it mean?
Silly. Being silly.
It's being silly. It's thinking a thought that's not its own. It's like you're pretending you're crazy.
זה כמו האברך או?
Uh-huh.
האברך. You know the signs of האברך שנכנסה בו רוח שטות?
No.
That one who abused kids or whatever.
It's a man.
Like the T5, like the earthly needs and everything, like.
No.
Like Averot, or is it just like?
No.
You know,
She's going to mention that both.
Unfortunately, this part is not funny.
Ella shegolas hazela b'chinas chachma enoi ella b'chinas hamispashetes mimena benefesh kula lachiosa. But there's a caveat. The caveat is that this golus, that the nefesh, the chachma shebenefesh is in golus, is not the chachma of the nefesh itself. It's only the effect of the hispashtut of the chachma shebenefesh, the expansion, the extension, the effect of the chachma shebenefesh. In other words, because I have chachma shebenefesh, I have intellect, and the chachma affects my behavior. The effect that it has on me can be captured by the nefesh abahamit. So my chachma shebenefesh gives me a particular talent. What's the talent? I can do something that I am completely not in agreement with. I can do something that doesn't make any sense to me. I can agree with something that I don't understand at all. You think that that's insanity. You need therapy. It's not that you need therapy. It's that you have chachma shebenefesh. Problem is, that's a great gift when you're serving Hashem that you can't understand. But it's also a terrible pitfall when you're doing stupid things. So when the chachma shebenefesh spreads its effect around the rest of the human experience, and that effect that is shared with the rest of the human experience can be captured by the klipa can then get you to do something that you don't agree with. But on the tzad shel klipa, in the unholy side, chachma shebenefesh usually can get you to do something for Hashem, even though it doesn't make any sense to you. You can die instead of bowing to the cross. That same chachma shebenefesh, when its effect gets captured by the klipa, it can make you do things that you don't agree with, and you can become the greatest kind of meshugana, doing things that you yourself know are wrong, but you promote it as if it's a truth. So it's a dangerous thing when the effect of the chachma shebenefesh ends up exiled in the Nefesh HaBehamit. However, the Alter Rebbe says, only the hispashtut, only the extension, only the effect of this Chochmah Shebenefesh can be an exile. The Chochmah Shebenefesh cannot, because the Chochmah Shebenefesh is always one with Hashem. But the core, the source of the primary, the actual chokhmah of the nefesh itself, of the nefesh elokit, that's in the mind. And it cannot become exiled into the nefesh habehamit, because the nefesh habehamit is where? In the heart. Chokhmah shebenefesh is in the mind. So the chokhmah, the actual chokhmah itself of the nefesh doesn't end up exiled into the heart, into the nefesh habehamit. If it can't be exiled, then how is it possible that a person can ever be wicked? Remember, how is it possible that a person can do something that's not godly? The answer was because the love is misuteret. And not only is it misuteret, it could be completely conquered and co-opted and exiled into the animal soul. So then how could you call the person a holy person? The answer is no, it's still a holy person because the chokhmah itself doesn't go into galut. Well, if the chokhmah itself doesn't go into galut, then why is he sinning? You can't have it both ways. Either the chokhmah of the nefesh goes into galut and therefore the person can sin, or the chokhmah shebenefesh does not go into galut and therefore the person should not sin. So we're saying no, the extension, the effect of the chokhmah shebenefesh does end up captured by the nefesh habehamit, by the animal soul. That's why the person sins, but not completely, because the chokhmah shebenefesh itself remains. So then back to the question, why is the person sinning? The answer is there's a difference between galut and asleep. That's what he's going to explain now. Listen to this. It's like the chokhmah shebenefesh is like it's sleeping. It's not having its effect. As long as their minds are completely consumed and busy with their thoughts of the desires of their worldly pleasures, the chokhmah shebenefesh doesn't have a voice because it's sleeping. So what's the difference between being in exile and therefore you don't feel it, or it's asleep and therefore you don't feel it? What's the difference?
In being in what? In
Either in galut or asleep. Either way, you don't feel the chokhmah shebenefesh. You don't feel the chokhmah shebenefesh. Why? Because it's in galut, or because it's asleep. What's the difference? Why do you have to have two different explanations for why I can't feel my chokhmah shebenefesh? The answer is because the extension, the effect of the chokhmah shebenefesh can be captured by the nefesh habehamit. The chokhmah shebenefesh itself cannot. Galut means captured by a foreign ruler. The chokhmah shebenefesh itself cannot be captured. It can only be silenced. It can be pushed aside or asleep. Practically, what's the difference? Practically, the difference is when your chokhmah shebenefesh is in galut, meaning the effect of your chokhmah shebenefesh, your ability to do things that are completely beyond sechel, beyond intellect. When that is in galut, you're doing crazy things. And what does it take to undo that? It's a lot of hard work. You got to do teshuvah. It's tough. You have to learn to appreciate the importance of God. But that's because it's in galut. You have to recapture it and bring it away from the foreign rulers, get it away from its captors and bring it back, like out of captivity, back into. When it's asleep, what do you have to do to get it to be effective again?
Wake it up.
Give it a zetz, it wakes up. How do you give it a zetz? How do you wake it up? When something threatens its connection to Hashem, that's the jolt that wakes it up.
What?
Like being threatened, bow to the cross or I'll kill you. Completely sever your tie to Hashem or we're going to kill you. The chokhmah shebenefesh suddenly wakes up and says, sever my connection to Hashem? Are you crazy? And you say, you don't have a connection to Hashem. You're sound asleep. What's your problem? Too late. I woke me up.
But if you're in the example of Malko cross and it's an Armagamuna, why does the act of just doing it, what does that have to be?
He's going to address that. Amazing. But when you come to a test with a matter of your core faith, which is higher than intellect, right? The whole conversation we had about the Chochmah Shebenefesh, that's the source of Emunah. Emunah is higher than intellect. Emunah is God himself is shining in your soul and you can't deny it. Not like something that your Bina understood. It's something that your Chachma is available to, right? Remember what the description between the difference between Chachma and Bina. Chachma, the relationship of Chachma to the concept is that it's open to the concept and the concept is shining in the Chachma. Bina is trying to develop an intellectual appreciation for the concept. So Bina is all about me. Chachma is all about it. So when it comes to Emunah, when it comes to your faith in Hashem, your Chochmah Shebenefesh is where your Emunah comes from, which means real Emunah is not that I've decided that that's a truth and that's why I believe it. Emunah means the truth of it doesn't let me feel anything different. The truth of it is informing me, right? So, when it comes to a matter of faith which is higher than intellect, and it touches the soul all the way to the chachma of the soul, that wakes it up, and it has the effect of the godliness that's in it, and that's why this completely disinterested Jewish person who's being threatened with death suddenly cannot bow to the cross. Can't do it. You say, why? It's not even interesting to you. You don't even believe this. The answer is, I can't do it. Why? Because the Chochmah Shebenefesh is awake, and then I have no choice. I have to serve Hashem. Like it says, Vayikatz Kiyoshin Hashem. Wake up. You say Hashem wakes up because he was asleep. What does that mean? How is Hashem asleep? It doesn't mean Hashem himself. It means that the spark of Hashem within me, which is the chachma of my nefesh, which was asleep in me, suddenly wakes up. Lamoid ben Nisayon ben Mons Hashem, to be able to withstand the test in my faith in Hashem, belishum taina v'das v'seichel musag loy, without any kind of understanding or any kind of intellectual process that makes any sense to him, to the person. His gaber ala klipa is to overpower the unholiness of Taivas Elam Haza and the pleasures of this world. Beheter ubeisur shehergol behem, whether it's permissible, like you were saying before, whether it's things that are permissible or whether it's things that are forbidden that you've become accustomed to. What's the difference? What's the difference between that which is permissible and that which is forbidden from way earlier in Tanya? Desires for that which is forbidden is the desires of shalosh klipot atmeot, right? And the desires for that which is permissible, but it's about me, not about Hashem, is from klipat noga. Here he's saying this overrides all of the klipot, the shalosh klipot atmeot and the klipat noga, whether it's the ta'avot, whether it's the desires of permissible things or forbidden things, and it goes so far. The effect of the newly awakened Chochmah Shebenefesh goes so far as v'lim ois bohem, to become disgusted with all of these things that a moment ago you found pleasurable. V'livchar loy havaya lechalkoi v'glugadoloi, and to choose Hashem as your portion. V'limsar loy nafshal kedush hashmoi, to literally give your life to sanctify Hashem's name. V'afkia klipas gavro alav kol yom v'loy yochlehem. And although all the days of your life until today, the klipa was overpowering you and you couldn't resist the klipa, like we said earlier in Tanya, the wicked are completely captured by their hearts. Whatever their heart wants, that's what happens. And suddenly now the person has changed completely. Nevertheless, when it comes to a matter of real core faith in Hashem, sheyesoidasa b'harei kodesh, which is rooted in that holiness we talked about, the chachma of the nefesh. That's where the infinite light of Hashem is in your soul. All of that klipa becomes completely irrelevant. And it's as if they don't exist and they never were. Like it says in the verse, Kol hagoyim ka'ayin negdoi. That's one pasuk. Uksiv and another pasuk. Kihinu yevecha Hashem kinu yevecha yevedu yispardu. All the enemies of Hashem disappear. Uksiv kihimes doinag mipnei esh yevedu v'goymer. Uksiv kaharim kadoinag lamasu. All of these verses that say that the klipa just completely melts away in the presence of Hashem, which means not in the presence of Hashem. Everything is in the presence of Hashem. It means that when the spark of Hashem in you wakes up, klipa doesn't stand a chance. You can't. Klipa doesn't have the ability to convince you to turn your back on Hashem when the part of Hashem in you is awake, is alive, is on
And it
fire.
also can go asleep again.
Yes, and it does.
It does.
It does, yes. V'hine, Oir Havaya, Oir Hashem, Ein Seif Baruch HaMelubash B'chachma Shebenefesh, the light of Hashem that's in the Chachma Shebenefesh, Godel V'otzim Koiche Kol Kach, it is so powerful. It's so powerful that it can cause the klipa to even lose their grip, not only on your feelings in your heart, but even on your action. Remember, we said that action is the farthest away from the nefesh, right? It's one of the levushei hanefesh, one of the garments of the soul, which means it's not even part of the nefesh itself. And the levushim are machshava, dibur, and maaseh, which means maaseh is the farthest of all of them. This light, this infinite light of Hashem that becomes awakened in your soul, it is so powerful that it will affect even the maaseh, even your actions. The farthest possible distance from the core, from the essence of your soul. Shehem machshava, dibur, and maaseh shel emunas Hashem echad. That means to behave in a way that corresponds to your faith in Hashem. Dahainu, this means lamoid b'nisoyin limsa nafshay, to be able to withstand the test and give up your life. Afilo shaloi la'asos rak eze ma'aseh levad neged emunas Hashem echad. Even the inability to simply do something, even if you don't believe it. By the way, if you ever have the terrible opportunity to look through the records of the Inquisition, which are public, you can see how many Jews did exactly this. Because in the Inquisition, when they burned a Jew at the stake for not choosing to convert to Christianity, they gave the person a choice. Just say the words and we'll strangle you before we burn you, which means a much quicker, painless death. And the vast majority of the Jews did not do it. What sense does that make?
Okay, not much if you want to stay alive and keep doing mitzvah. We were just talking before that.
Yeah, so the person knew that they were going to die.
Yeah,
So
so you got so far, you're already dying for sticking to your faith. Do it all the way. It's just a matter of words. You could just say, I'm a Christian now.
No, if you don't understand.
You don't understand. In front of a cross, and we'll let you go, and then I can keep doing mitzvahs like people did.
Yeah, but think about the pain that they're about to suffer. I mean, that's
Yeah.
That's
No, I was thinking about,
unimaginable pain.
dying, like,
There was no combina back in the day.
yeah, but you're preserving yourself to, like we said, keep living and doing
I think
mitzvah. You know, like,
they just started investing.
So there's actually a whole debate in the Gemara about if somebody is forced to do avodah zarah, and they do it because they were forced, is that really considered avodah zarah or not? I'm going to get to that also in a second, I think. But the point is that even just to say the words, just to bow, can't do it. Even though you know you don't believe it, can't do it.
marathon.
Why? Nobody's looking. Can't do it. Why? Because the Or Ein Sof of the Chochma Shebenefesh, which when it's awake, when it's alive, when it's shining, it affects every part of you, even simple, meaningless actions. You can't do it. Like, for example, to bow to an idol. Even though you don't believe it at all in your heart, can't do it. The Cain, same is true. Even not to say something that would contradict the oneness of Hashem. Even though your heart doesn't agree with what your mouth is saying. The heart is completely at peace with the oneness of Hashem. Nevertheless, you can't do it. This answers the fourth question. Remember, the fourth question was, how does this concealed love include fear also? The answer is, we just answered it. This love that you have for Hashem includes a kind of a fear, which is the fear of separating from God. Like the flame that also always wants to connect, go back to being one with its source. Because of this love and this desire to connect to Hashem, it is afraid and is terrified, betiva, naturally, not intellectually, but naturally. It is terrified from even touching the edges of the unholiness of Avodah Zarah. That's the opposite of Hashem Echad. Even with the outer garments, which are the dibur, without any faith in the heart, it can't do it. This answers the other question you asked. You just said, it is afraid, is terrified, betiva, naturally, without intellectual process, from touching even the fringes, the edges of the tum'ah of Avodah Zarah. Why does it say of the chet of Avodah Zarah? Idolatry is a sin. Why does it say the unholiness of idolatry? Why doesn't it say the sin of idolatry? Because it means even when the way you're doing this idolatry, it's not a sin, can't do it anyways, because it's unholy. That's how powerful the nefesh that you have is. That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying. What the Alter Rebbe is saying is that you have in you a point in your nefesh, in your chochmah shebenefesh, that is so powerful that even what he's explaining here, that doesn't make any sense to you. Why would you do that? Why would anybody do that? That doesn't make any sense. You can find infinite number of stories in Jewish history of Jewish people who did exactly this, and chances are, if you ask them, why did you do it? They would say, I have no idea. That was the craziest thing in the world. I didn't mean it. I didn't want to. I desperately wanted to bow to that idol and save my life, and I couldn't do it. Couldn't. Because the chochmah shebenefesh was shaken out of its sleep, and now it's awake.
And that was times where they went to, where all of them, they would go.
Yeah. Or they pretended.
Well, I remember I think it's from the Gemara that Rabbi Yochanan had a conversation with I don't remember who. He asked him, how come you even worked Avodah Zarah in your generation? Because if you were in my generation, you would lift up your dress.
Right, right. That the desire, the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah was so strong that
Right.
It's interesting that, speaking of the Inquisition, it's very interesting that if you think of the history of the Inquisition, of the expulsion from Spain, the Jews in Spain in 1492, they had a choice: either convert to Christianity or leave the country. Many of them left the country instead of converting. Many of them stayed and pretended. Right? That's how the Inquisition started, because there were so many Jewish people and others who pretended to convert to Christianity but didn't, and deep, in secret, they were still being Jewish. Who were the ones that didn't pretend and left? It's safe to assume those are the ones who were stronger in their faith, right? Those are the ones who were chazak in their emunah. But here's an amazing thing. They left. Most of them went to Portugal. How long did it last? 50 years?
Not even. Yeah.
Not even. 5 years? 7 years? How many years was it before the king of Portugal said, convert or get out of the country?
Yeah.
Go to Morocco.
A couple of years.
And they tried to leave, and the king of Portugal didn't let them leave and forced them all to go through baptism. got them all into a thing, sprinkled water on them, and said, "Now you're Christian." It's an amazing thing. The ones that tried their best not to even pretend to convert were the ones that were forced to convert without. So yeah, the story of Jewish people being forced to give up their religion, their faith in Hashem, is an old, unfortunately, an old long story.
Happen until today.
Happens even today. But the amazing thing is that there's this incredible phenomenon of a Jewish person who is challenged with this challenge and cannot do it, cannot violate their connection to Hashem. And the explanation for it is this Ava Misuteret, this hidden love that comes from the Chochmah Shebenefesh.